Hello, and welcome to day 18 of 100 Days of Tonalism. This is your painter in residence, M. Francis McCarthy, and the study that I did today is of a painting by George Inness Jr. I don't believe I have a title for this one. I've just referred to it as landscape. You clearly, if you've been following the blog, have heard of George Inness, from me anyway, and George Inness Jr. is, of course, his son. George Inness Jr. wrote quite a good biography of George Inness that I've read several times, mostly in the pursuit of trying to glean some insight into George Inness's techniques, which, of course, his son would have been there to observe firsthand. Unfortunately, there's not a lot in that book. I've combed it many times trying to remember something I'd seen in there. It does mention that George Inness himself had a tendency to obtain the results he got by any manner that he could, whether it was glazing or scraping or picking at it with the palette knife, anything he could do. I found a biography about George Inness Jr. on Wikipedia, so I'll go ahead and read that for you now. George Inness Jr. was born 1854 and died in 1926, so he had a good long life. He was one of America's foremost figure and landscape artists and the son of George Inness, an important landscape painter. He studied with his father and Leon Bonnat in the 1870s in Europe, where he was made an officer of the Académie des Beaux-Arts. Like his father, he was considered a member of the Barbizon school and resisted Impressionism. Later he returned to the United States and became known for his paintings of animals and illustrations of hunting scenes. In 1899 he was elected to the National Academy of Design. He lived and worked in Boston, New York City, and New Jersey, and finally in Tarpon Springs, Florida, where he produced most of his life's work. The Unitarian Universalist Church in Tarpon Springs contains a collection of 11 of his works, several of which are murals painted directly onto the walls of the church sanctuary. Inness married the daughter of publisher Roswell Smith, who founded the publishing house The Century Company. Smith's purchase of a large canvas painted by Inness of New Hampshire's Mount Washington helped launch Inness's financial success, which did not come until middle age. Inness later purchased his home, Wentworth Manor in Montclair, New Jersey, from his father-in-law, Smith, in 1889. The summer stayed at Craigsmoor, New York, is known as Chitola and listed in the National Register of Historic Places. So that's quite a lot of good biographical information about George Inness. In his biography of his father, he mentions that his father had a tendency to do paintings on top of his own paintings, that being his son, George Inness Jr., George Inness's own paintings, and the paintings of his friends when the mood struck him, which is a tendency you don't see any longer. In researching George Inness Jr., I see several of his paintings online, some of that have been sold at auctions and things like that, and I quite like his paintings. They're very reminiscent of his father's work, and he definitely carried the tonalist torch until his death in 1925, so good on him. He was actually a very, very good painter, and it can't be easy to have a father who was maybe the greatest landscape painter ever. But he speaks very fondly and favorably of his father in this book, and he seemed to have real insight into his father's character, and I think he was proud of his heritage, and it shows in the artwork that he produced, in that it's very reminiscent of the paintings of his father and the style, of course, that his father developed in tonalism. You can see we're getting a little close to the end of the video here, so I'd like to thank you for joining me on day 18 of 100 Days of Tonalism. If you'd like to see more of my work, you can go to landscapepainter.co.nz or NZ and check it out. We'll see you tomorrow for day 19, and stay out of trouble. Take care.